Anywho, next story. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of this place, so I'm not going to, because they might lawyer me to death. So give me 1 second to Google the Greek alphabet. You might be asking, Void, why are you Googling the Greek alphabet? What could that possibly have to do with anything? You'll see. Okay. That doesn't tell me the names. How do I say it? Okay. You know what? We're gonna call them... Which one's the most fun to say? We're gonna call them... Lambda. Okay, we're gonna call them Lambda. Alright, so for the sake of this, the company is called Lambda. They're not actually, but it's whatever. You can probably guess the motif I'm going for here. Anyway, so I had to fly to England, right? Because I normally live in the United States, unfortunately. And, I have family and friends that live in England, and I was, like, coming over here to visit my grandma. And so I had to fly to get over here, right? Yeah, you'd think. It took way longer than it should have, and let me tell you why. So I flew from my hometown to Detroit, no problem. I'm not telling you where my hometown is because no. But anyway, just know that I went from there to Detroit. Totally fine, everything was fine, and this was the first time in my life that I was flying internationally, or even like in the country, like by myself. So I was completely alone on this one. And I was like, okay, this is fine. So, like, I get to Detroit just fine. That was fine. And I have, like, a little bit of a layover for the next flight from Detroit to London. And you know what? I was like, this is fine. I can just get off the plane. I have enough time to, like, grab some snacks. And then I can, like, go over to the gate and this will be fine. So I go over to the gate, right? And when I get there, I'm like, okay, this should say it's going to London Heathrow. And I get there, and I look at the board, and it says... Hold on, it's something starting with an N. Or M, oh my goodness. What was it? It wasn't Memphis, it was the other one. Minneapolis, there we go. Don't ask me why I keep thinking of Memphis, I don't know. So it says Minneapolis on the board. And I was like, what? And so I call my mom, and I'm like, hey mom, I got to the gate, but it says it's going to Minneapolis and not London Heathrow? And she was like, well, you're at the wrong gate. And I'm like, I'm not at the wrong gate. I may have dyslexia, but I'm pretty confident that I read this right because I've been obsessively checking it since I got here. I was at the right gate. She's like, okay, go up and ask the front desk. And so I go up and ask the front desk, and I'm like, hey, am I at the right gate? Because, you know, I always make it sound like it's my fault. So they start talking to me, and they're like, yeah, you're at the right gate, like, this is going to London Heathrow, but we had to change it a little bit, so you guys are gonna go to, Minneapolis first. Because this plane has a problem, and so we're gonna fly you to Minneapolis, and then you're gonna get on a different plane there, and then you're gonna go to London. And I was like, oh, okay. And my mom was on the phone, so my mom was hearing this whole thing, and she was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm just gonna roll with it. And what they told me, and I was like, you said there's a problem with the plane. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, what is the problem with the plane? And they were like, oh, it just, like, can't fly over water. And I was like, if it can't fly over water, it can't fly over land, but whatever. So I just kind of, like, go sit back down, and then I wait. And then a little bit later, we should be boarding, and then they're like, hey, actually, we're gonna delay the flight a little bit, because they haven't fixed it yet. And I was like, okay, this is getting weird, but fine. And then eventually they actually do board everyone on the plane. And so like we're all sitting on there. We are sitting on this plane for an hour and a half. I watched most of Quiet Place in that time. And let me tell you, this was like, you know, one of those big planes because we were going overseas. I had a row of 3 to myself. And I never got to use it, and I'm so mad. So anyway, we were sitting on the plane for an hour and a half, like, waiting. No one really knew what was going on. And then the captain, after, like, they delayed it, like, again, while we were sitting on the plane, which is why we were there for an hour and a half, the captain comes on, and he goes, yeah, I don't know how to tell you all this, but we're gonna have to cancel the flight because like the pilots would be going over on their hours, and like Memphis is having tornadoes right now, or like they're having a tornado warning or like an extreme weather warning. So, or Minneapolis. Why do I keep saying Memphis? Oh my god. So this flight is canceled, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me?" So, everyone gets off the plane. We're all like lining up at the front desk because like they need to give us you know, information for like the makeup flight tomorrow and like what we're gonna be doing tonight for the hotels and all that good stuff. And so my parents were kind of like freaking out about this when they heard about it. So like they were calling, I almost said the name of the company, whoopsies. They were calling Upsilon, and they were like, my daughter is up there by herself, and like do something because like she has anxiety, like help her. And like they're not wrong, I do have anxiety, but I was actually dealing with this pretty okay at that point. So I feel so bad for these Upsilon workers. I feel so bad for them because like I know it wasn't their fault, but and like everyone else knew that it wasn't their fault, so I was surprised at how cool everyone was keeping. Like I didn't hear a single person have a shouting match with any of them. There were no Karens. I was amazed. Granted, it was a bunch of British people, so that kind of makes sense. Anyway, so this Upsilon worker that my mom was talking to calls me and is like, hey, I know you're in a huge line right now, but just go up to the front desk and like just wait there until you get the attention of one of the other Upsilon workers, and then tell them you have me on the phone. And I was like, okay. And so I go up there, I wait for a second, and then the worker closest to me kind of like notices me, and she's like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, I have an Upsilon employee on the phone. She kind of looks at me very skeptically, and she's like, what? What do you mean? Like, you have an Upsilon worker on the phone? And I was like, yeah, I do. Which, I mean, I get it. If I was in her shoes, I would be the exact same way, because I would be like, you are a kid. Why do you have this person on the phone? What? So anyway, she's like, yeah, this Upsilon worker just wants to, like, talk to you on behalf of, like, my mom, who's not here. So here you go. And she's like, okay. And so I put the phone down, I put it on speaker, and oh my god, the Upsilon worker on the phone was so nice. Oh my gosh, she was so cool. And she was like, hey, like, this person's mom was like talking to me, and like she's really worried because this is the first time she's traveled by herself. Can you like help her out a little bit more, because like she has anxiety, like can you help her out and make sure she's okay? And so this Upsilon worker was like, all right, yeah, that's cool. She seems really annoyed though, which understandable. I would also like to point out, at this point in time, it is about 11:30, 12 a.m. So like, it's getting pretty late. We're all tired. None of us want to be here. And she has like a big line of people to go through, and suddenly she has this, by all means, kid walking up to her with a person on the phone that says, hey, can you just like help this one out a little extra? Like, I get it, I would be annoyed too. So, I'm trying to gather my thoughts, I'm sorry. So, that whole thing happens, and there's this one person at the front of the line. For the sake of privacy, I will call them... I should just, like, pick a random name that I assign to everyone who I talk about. We'll call her... How do names work? I don't remember. We'll call her Alex. Okay, cool. So Alex and I start talking because I was like, oh my gosh, hey, I like your sweatshirt. I noticed like you've been up here pretty much the whole time. Are they really that slow? And she goes, yeah, oh my god, like they're going so slow. So eventually, like we just start talking, and we become friends, honestly. And so like we both get our hotels scheduled for the night, and we go outside, and we have to call the shuttles from the hotels. And so we go like to we were gonna be staying at 2 different places. And so Alex goes to call her hotel, I go to call mine, and while I'm on hold, she walks back over and says, yeah, apparently the hotel that I was supposed to go to is full because the person who works at the front desk there literally said, I don't know why they're sending you here. We don't have any rooms. Figure it out yourself. So I was like, oh my god, okay, yeah, that's a no bueno. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me too. So the person who works at the front desk at the hotel I was going to picks up the phone, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can like send you a bus, we can send you a shuttle, like that's totally fine. And I was like, okay, hey Alex, do you want to stay with me? Because before I'd gotten my room, it was like it was getting to be like 1:30 in the morning. She had offered to let me stay with her before I had gotten my hotel room, because I wasn't getting like the emails or texts that everyone else was getting. And I was like, okay, at this point, Alex no longer had a room, so she would have had to stay by herself in the airport in Detroit overnight. And I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So I was like, hey Alex, do you want to stay with me tonight, and we can just like worry about this in the morning? And she was like, yeah, sure, thank you. And I was like, okay, cool. So we get on the shuttle. On the way back, we see a Cracker Barrel within walking distance from this hotel. So we go to this hotel, we go to sleep at about 2:30 in the morning, which, long day for me. So we go to sleep, we wake up, we get ready, and we had to check out by 11. But our flight the next day was, the earliest one that we ended up booking for was at 6:45 p.m. So we had all day to wait.